Hi, everyone. Welcome to My Weight Live. Tonight, we're talking with dietitian Jennifer Brown all about common food and nutrition myths. Jennifer is the lead author of the Medical Nutrition Therapy chapter of the Canadian Adult Obesity Practice Guidelines, and she has lots of wisdom to share with us tonight. It's going to be a great show, but before we get started, folks, tell me where you're watching from and what's on your mind. I'm so glad you've tuned in. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me, Ainsley.
So, your chapter of the clinical practice guidelines debunks a lot of myths that we're going to be talking about tonight. But the first one I want you to cover is one that's so pervasive, most people don't even realize it's a myth. And that's that the answer for reaching a healthier weight is to go on a diet. Talk about why that's not true and why the word diet doesn't actually even really appear in the guidelines at all.
The way we kind of think of diets now is it's very much around, restriction and cutting calories and what we can't have or depriving ourselves in a way to, lose weight or trying to achieve thinness. And unfortunately, this can lead to quite a lot of negative thoughts, beliefs, and just eating habits in general. We looked at evidence-based nutrition is something that we call nutrition interventions. And so changing that language in the guidelines helps to debunk that idea that you need to cut your calories or you need to deprive yourself. Rather, you want to eat in a way that respects your body, respects your food choices, and really bring back the enjoyment of eating.
I love that. That's kind of two different worldviews. This really negative, punitive idea of being on a diet versus kind of like nourishing your body and really having joy from food. All right, lots more questions for you, lots more myth busting to do. But first, let's do tonight's trivia question. Folks, if you answer tonight's question, you will get our free giveaway, which is a snack upgrade guide. It has healthy and tasty ways to take your snacks from dull to delicious. Definitely something you want to download and check out, and you will get it for free if you answer tonight's question, which is which food contains the most fiber? Is it A, one medium sized artichoke, or B, one slice of whole wheat toast? That question again, which food has more fiber? Is it a medium sized artichoke or one slice of whole wheat toast? This is a little bit of a tricky one, but you don't have to get it right to get that guide to upgrading your snacks to be healthier and more delicious. Just put an answer in the comments and you will get our free guide. Jennifer, let's talk a little bit more about calories. I think many of us have heard the idea that if you cut 3,500 calories, you'll lose a pound. Based on what we know today, is that true or is that a myth? What do the guidelines say about cutting calories as a way to reach a healthier weight?
I get this a lot because the age old thought was if we reduce our calories by, 500 calories a day, 7 days a week, there's your 3,500 calories, and that should equal that 1 pound of weight loss. And in theory, that makes sense, but unfortunately, it's not true. Our bodies don't actually work like that. Our bodies eventually, once we reduce calories or we lose weight, our bodies have a defense system built in us that will actually fight against that weight loss. So, a lot of times, these hormones that get changed when we reduce these calories is it will fight us and make us feel hungrier or less full. And in some people, they actually have increased cravings.
Okay, so that brings us to another really interesting thing about the guidelines, which is that in a lot of cases, they really discourage people from focusing on the number on the scale and instead encourage focus on health, focus on behaviors that we control. So, talk a little bit about how someone might think about what their goal is and how they can kind of keep it within their locus of control.
I think it's going to take a long time before everybody kind of adapts to thinking about, we all come in different body sizes, we all come in different body shapes and weights, just like we all come in different heights. And so I think it's important to recognize that health is not measured by a number on a scale. And that's something that the guidelines really emphasize the importance that you can still have great health at lots of different body sizes, shapes, and weights. But it's really important to focus on things that you actually have control over or eating in a way that respects your enjoyment of food, your eating habits. And so if you're really wanting to look at things that you have control over, it might be looking at eating in a way that helps to manage your hunger or improve or increase your fullness or help to reduce some of those cravings. And so there's lots of factors that we can use or non-weight victories and not focusing so much on the scale itself.
So, another thing the guidelines mention about restrictive weight loss methods is that they can end up making people micronutrient deficient. So, talk a little bit about what that is. And, are supplements the answer here? What do the guidelines say about supplementation?
So, when it comes to deficiencies, I think one of the key things that we need to remember is that a lot of the quote unquote diets that exist, they cut out certain foods or they cut out certain food groups, which are loaded in a lot of those vitamins and minerals that our body needs. So, by actually cutting those out, now a lot of people could be at higher risk for having deficiencies. However, what we see in the literature is that a lot of people, even if they're not doing diets, a lot of folks might actually have deficiencies, and it could be from medication interactions. It could be from previous surgeries they may have had that can cause some of those nutrients to not get well absorbed. And in some cases, we're actually seeing some folks, their body just doesn't absorb vitamins or minerals the same way as others. So, a common deficiency we see, especially in Canada, is vitamin D deficiency.
Mm.
And so, what can we do about that? Well, number one is to work with a registered dietitian to actually have a full assessment done to make sure that the foods that you're having, if you do decide that there's certain foods or food groups that don't work well for you, then they can help make sure that there's other foods that can work to kind of get those missing nutrients. And if vitamin or mineral supplements are needed, then you can always talk again to your healthcare provider about which ones might be best for you.
All right, a very popular myth is that there's one right diet or a best eating approach for weight loss or health, but the guidelines make it clear that that's just not true. So debunk this myth for us. Why is there not one best eating approach, and how should someone find the right one for them?
Well, again, the literature continually tells us that everybody responds differently to a different way of eating. And so, some people might do better with a certain way of eating, others may not. And so that we don't really recommend one best eating pattern over another. And that's why we really want to individualize it. We're recognizing that people's genetics, their physiology, their environment, their access to food, their preferences for food, all of these things can make it a big impact. So just because the next best fad diet is popular doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. And I think we really, again, going back, we want to get away from that diet type of mentality and eat foods that you just really enjoy.
Folks, as you're hearing us talk about the guidelines, if you're curious to learn more about them, we're going to link to several great resources in the comments, so be sure to check those out. They're a very big deal. All right, Jennifer, the guidelines do make some specific recommendations about eating approaches that have been shown to show health benefits. So let's talk a little bit about those. The first one I want to ask you about is the Mediterranean eating approach. I think a lot of us have heard about the Mediterranean diet, but what exactly is it, and who could benefit from this eating style?
Yeah, the Mediterranean eating patterns it's been around for a while, and in fact, we have really strong evidence that it can work really well for some people. So a Mediterranean eating pattern usually consists primarily of plant-based foods, so quite a lot of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, fish, and olive oil and olives. And so a lot of the literature that's been done, especially long term, because that's something that we lack in a lot of nutrition studies, is really good quality research that's been done in lots of folks for a long period of time. And so the studies that were looking at the Mediterranean eating patterns actually found that regardless of calories, so people weren't cutting calories at all, they were just eating the foods that they wanted to eat, and they actually saw an improvement in their heart health. They saw improvements in diabetes. And, we saw this even without any type of weight loss. So
Wow.
I think that was really important when it came to those type of studies. And that's why the Mediterranean eating pattern tends to be something that we recommend for some people.
So those are some really powerful results. For
Mhm.
those of you who have just joined us, we're here with dietitian Jennifer Brown talking about food, fads, and nutrition, fact versus fiction. And in case you missed it earlier, we are giving away a free guide to snack upgrades to anyone who answers our trivia question tonight. In case you missed it, that question again: which food contains the most fiber? A medium-sized artichoke, or B, one slice of whole wheat toast? Put your best answer in the comments and you will get our guide that will give you some fresh snack ideas. So, Jennifer, the guidelines also talk about a vegetarian diet as one that shows health benefits. Can you talk a little bit about the specific benefits of choosing a vegetarian diet? And is it a myth that it's hard for vegetarians to get enough protein?
So there's lots of different eating patterns. When we talk about vegetarian eating, it's kind of an umbrella of lots of different ways of eating. All of those different eating patterns we found in the literature that can be very supportive for again heart health, for diabetes, and again higher fiber. We see improvements in terms of GI health as well. So your second question though about the protein, well, I think that's a big myth that oftentimes people think, oh, well, if I just if I cut out all those animal meats, I'm not going to get my protein, and that's actually not true. We actually see quite a lot of plant-based foods have lots of protein in them. So people tend to eat a lot more beans and lentils or dried peas, nuts, certain seeds. All of these things are going to give us some more protein. Whole grains like quinoa and buckwheat are another great choice of getting protein. And then soy kind of products. So tofu and tempeh and fortified soy type of beverages are other ways that people can get their protein in.
So, if someone's kind of intrigued by the idea of eating less meat, but they don't want to be 100% vegetarian, is it still beneficial, to eat less meat, to eat some kind of vegetarian a couple of days a week or even a couple of meals a week?
Absolutely. I think that, and it doesn't even have to be thinking of it as being vegetarian. A lot of times, when I say vegetarian, my husband cringes. But, when we talk about just, it's just easy as substituting, some beans. Like I always think of like we put black beans in quesadillas instead of chicken, or if we're having like some nachos, I might throw on some beans on that. A really easy way of trying to get some extra protein. But yeah, you can do that, one day a week. A lot of times we talk about like meatless Mondays. So it doesn't have to be difficult, and it can taste good. And there's so many recipes and websites out there that can give people some ideas of trying to get more plant-based foods.
One thing I felt reading the guidelines, Jennifer, is that there is a magic bullet for good health, and it's fiber. Talk about all the benefits of fiber that you share in the guidelines, and if you would, are there some easy ways that people might be able to start getting a little more fiber into their day?
I always say fiber is a magic food, and it's so funny because we always giggle when we think about fiber, but in the end, I mean, fiber not only makes us feel full, and I think that's a really important thing that when we're eating, we want to be satisfied when we're having something to eat. So we know vegetables are full of fiber, fruits are full of fiber. We know whole grains are filled with fiber. And I think a lot of people get scared when they think of some of the grains. So it's a matter of making sure that you enjoy ones that again that taste good and something that you can include in your way of eating. Working with a dietitian can help customize that, especially around how much fiber you need. So we know that the evidence around how much fiber does vary from person to person, but typically women should have about 25 up to, maybe even 35 grams of fiber a day. And men should actually be higher than 35 grams. And, it's interesting when we actually look at how much fiber most people get, it's maybe 10 grams a day. So we're not doing all that great when it comes to getting our fiber, but it could be simple. It could be something like if you're just having I don't know, let's say a salad and you just want to throw on a handful of nuts, or if you want to throw on some beans and lentils. Beans and lentils, again, they're just chock full of all kinds of nutrients, especially fiber and protein. So, having something like that on a salad, I mentioned the idea of putting in some beans in quesadillas, topping things on nachos, or if you're wanting to have a stir fry, throwing in some edamame. These are all great ways of getting some more fiber.
Speaking of fruits and veggies, a super common myth is that the healthy way to start our day off is with a glass of orange juice. So, is orange juice as healthy as so many commercials would have us believe?
Okay, basic answer is no. um, okay, let's break that down. When it comes to orange juice, I mean, a lot of the juices out there, they if they're not coming from concentrate and they're claiming they're coming from 100% fruit juice. So if we use orange juice as an example, oftentimes it depends on the size of glass that people have. But if you're like me, I want a nice big glass of orange juice. But if we think about how many oranges it might take to squeeze to get into that juice, Sometimes you're looking at 3, maybe even up to 10 oranges a day, or 10 oranges just in that glass of juice. And I always think, well, would I ever sit there and just eat, 10 oranges all at once? And it's, you know, again, you have to think about, I have to peel all these oranges. I've got to have that and eat it. So it's not as beneficial to have that in a juice form. It's a little bit too much sugar all at once. And you're not getting any of that fiber. So I think when we actually eat the fruit, and that's the benefit of the actual fruit is the fiber that we find in the skins and in the actual fruit itself. So chewing it, taking our time to eat it, that's also going to help you feel a lot fuller. So, for those people who still want to have a little bit of juice, I always say go ahead and have some. Just make sure, have a smaller glass or maybe dilute it with a little bit of water, but your best choice is always going to be the actual fruit itself.
Folks, Jennifer is sharing such great information with us here tonight. If you'd like to learn more from medical experts, check out our podcast. We have in depth interviews with physicians, dietitians, and psychologists on a wide variety of topics related to reaching our best weight. Just search My Weight What to Know wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll put a link in the comments too. So, Jennifer, a big myth is that fruit has too much sugar, but the guidelines actually specifically mention adding fruits and vegetables to our diet to reduce our risk of developing type 2 diabetes and to improve our heart health. So I got to ask you, like, what's the best way to get more fruits and veggies into our diet?
We did find that fruits and vegetables, because they're so high in fiber, they have such, super nutrients in them that to help protect us against the heart disease, even diabetes. And I know that some vegetables and some fruits get that bad reputation of being high in sugar, but we actually find that those foods can decrease blood sugars. So it's important to make sure choosing higher fiber foods. So some strategies that you can do to try to get more fruits and vegetables is thinking about your meal, whether you're having a mixed meal, so something like a lasagna or a stir fry, or if you're thinking about, let's say you're having some pizza, um, you want to make sure that at least half of your plate is filled with veggies. So if you were going to take all that food apart from whatever you're eating, would it fill at least, half of the plate you're eating, or would it at least fill 50% of what you're having? It could be having a handful of veggies on the side. It could be, I mean, the common ones that a lot of people like are celery and carrots, but you jazz it up a little bit. Try things like, some zucchini, maybe dip that into some, ranch dressing that you've mixed with some Greek yogurt. Or if you like to have some berries are full of not only antioxidants, but they're full of fiber and they're sweet, they taste good. So try throwing that on some, Greek yogurt, maybe a little bit of some nuts, and if for a little bit of treat, maybe shave on a little bit of dark chocolate for something extra special.
Oh, what a great idea. I love that. And I like the idea of kind of deconstructing our plate and our minds. Is half of my plate, those vegetables that I really need? I love that idea. All right, Jennifer, the clinical practice guidelines were released back in August, and they're a really big deal. So, is there anything we haven't covered about the guidelines tonight that you feel is really important for people watching at home to know?
Well, I think we've touched on quite a lot. I will say that it's going to likely take a lot of time before we kind of see this translate into practice, not only from healthcare providers and the public and policymakers. So I think it's going to be something that we continually have to reinforce, that we need to break a lot of those, the diet culture that we've been all brought up to think that the only way to manage our weight is by dieting or cutting calories or that whole goal around trying to lose weight. And I think the guidelines have done such a great job with, taking a look at the evidence and recognizing it's not perfect and realizing that there's going to be some future changes. But that's something that we need to move away from that, the fear of weight, and we need to embrace body diversity, and we need to embrace eating in a way that is pleasurable, enjoyable, and something that will nourish our body.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a ton. I know our folks at home have as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jennifer.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me today.
So, before I say goodbye to everyone at home, I want to make sure I give you the answer to tonight's trivia question. Which food contains the most fiber? The thing we've talked most about tonight. A, one medium sized artichoke, or B, one slice of whole wheat toast? The answer is A. An artichoke, a medium-sized artichoke, actually has 10 grams of fiber. Yet another example of how good vegetables are for us. If you haven't answered that trivia question tonight, leave a comment for us. Tell us what you thought of tonight's show, and you will get that snack upgrades guide. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time, November 17th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.